registered. Communists are also there. Every single color of the political spectrum in Ukraine and every region is represented among the 23 candidates. So there's somebody for everybody to vote for.
So it's better, it's more than just the best observed election, it's a legitimate election.
That is what the OSCE assesses.
Right. Well, we did have an election, we did have a legitimate election before, and the elected president was removed after we had major street violence in reaction to his decision of going with an economic agreement with Russia rather than the EU. About that street violence that happened that led to this Mr. Yanukovych's removal, there were pictures that people running around with these that we were told were neo-Nazis. Were there neo-Nazis in those street violence that led to Mr. Yanukovych's removal?
First of all, the vast majority of those who participated on the Maidan were peaceful protesters. If you had a chance to see the pictures, many of us visited, including many members here. There were mothers and grandmothers and veterans.
Let me note that I have.
However,
before you go on, I saw those pictures as well. I also saw a lot of pictures of people throwing firebombs at groups of policemen who were huddled over in a corner, where people shooting into the ranks of police. So yes, there were mothers with flowers, but there were also very dangerous street fighters who were engaged in those demonstrations. The question is, were there neo-Nazi groups involved in that?
There were, as I said, almost every color of Ukraine was represented, including some ugly colors.
The answer is yes, then.
But if I could say that with regard to the violence, all of those incidents are subject to investigation, notably including the deadly sniper incident in February, and there is good evidence to believe that there were outside agitators involved in that.
Was there any indication that there were guns being involved with the anti-government demonstrators at that time?
There is no question that as the protests became more and more virulent, and as the response of Yanukovych's police became more and more brutal, the tensions and the potential for use of weapons escalated on both sides, which was why we were so intent on a political settlement in February.
One last question before my time is totally up, and that is, were there the neo-Nazi groups that we're talking about here, which, again, were not dominating this. There were very many very good people, like you say, out demonstrating against this deal with Russia. They wanted to go with more of a European country than a pro-Russian country. But those people who were not the good guys, but were part of that effort to push that country in that direction, were any of those neo-Nazi groups affiliated with any other Nazi groups in other countries?
Congressman, what I can tell you, I don't know what the answer to that specific question with regard to the early period is. What I can tell you is that in the violence and separatism that we have seen in the recent months, we've also seen recruiting on the neo-Nazi and fascist sites in Russia for volunteers to go participate in the seizing of buildings in eastern Ukraine, and the Ukrainians report stopping very large numbers of such people at the Ukrainian-Russian border.
Well, I'm sure, but you haven't seen any evidence that there are people in Western Europe, neo-Nazi groups, that were supporting their brothers in Ukraine.
I don't have any information to corroborate that, but I would refer you to the Ukrainians as they investigate these incidents of violence.
Thank you.
Brad, did you want to yield for the moment?